Hello, everyone. Welcome to this latest installment of the Mozu webinar series. Today, we're joined by Forrester Research to bring you an e-commerce platform manifesto, what retailers must deliver to outperform the competition. My name is John Hessinger, Vice President of Marketing for Mozu, and I'll be today's moderator. Today's webinar is scheduled for an hour, and we will leave time for Q&A at the end, so please feel free to submit questions along the way. All right, so let's get into the content. I'm very excited to introduce today's presenters. First off, we're joined by Peter Sheldon, a very familiar face, Principal Analyst with Forrester Research, who will guide us through the rapidly changing consumer expectations and what retailers need to be thinking about in order to deliver against those expectations. In second position, we'll hear from Jason Wallace, Chief Technical Officer for Mozu, who will share how retailers are using new innovative technology to not only meet but exceed those growing demands. With that, I'll hand it off to you, Peter.
Great, thanks very much, John, and welcome everyone to the webinar today. So, as John said, over the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to talk a little bit about Forrester's view of the market, and I want to talk as to what is driving retailers to re-platform their e-commerce technology and what they're looking for in the marketplace. So let's take a start, and I want to spend the first portion of the webinar looking a little bit at the growth factors. What is driving this, quite frankly, explosive growth in e-commerce technology, and it really comes from the consumers and the shift in spending from offline to online, increased usage in e-commerce. So we see this globally, and I'm going to share with you now some of the data from Forrester that we have. Forrester, as you know, is an independent research firm, and we spend a lot of time, money, and effort looking at consumer trends and forecasting growth in the marketplace. And one of the forecasts that I'm sharing with you here at the moment is Forrester's forecast for consumer online spend, and this is for the U.S. market. So we can see today in 2015, U.S. consumers will spend about $325 billion online, and these are sort of traditional e-commerce transactions: buy online, ship to home, buy online, ship to store, pick up in store type transactions. And so, year over year, we're still seeing double-digit growth, so sort of 11% year-over-year growth in online retail. It growth slowly starting to taper off, but still, very significant growth through to the end of the decade. And the overall share that online has as a proportion of total retail spend is around 10% today, and that's going to grow, up to 11% towards the end of the decade. So by the time we reach 2018, U.S. consumers will spend $414 billion online, and so this is, quite significant growth. Now, this is just B2C spend, so this is consumer spend online. Now, if we take a slightly different look at this and look at B2B spend, it's already significantly higher than B2C. So today, the U.S. firms doing B2B e-commerce transactions, so these are typically engineers and buyers who are buying from manufacturers, distributors, from wholesale, already order $780 billion worth of goods through B2B e-commerce today, and by 2018 we're going to reach $1 trillion of B2B transactions. And you can see again, the growth rate, very significant in this space, and very similar to B2C, that around 10% of total B2B sales now occur through digital online e-commerce channels, with the remainder typically being EDI transactions and traditional relationships between sales account reps and the end customer. So B2B is interesting because the actual volume of transactions or the volume of visitors is much lower, but generally the volume of transactions and the value of the transactions are much higher, as in B2B orders are generally for bulk orders, very large quantities, and so the transaction dollar volume tends to be much higher. Now, if we look back to B2C and retail for a moment, we can see that retailers are very bullish on growth. And if we this is from a survey that Forrester does each year with shop.org, and we can see here that the majority of retailers saw positive growth through last year, with some retailers seeing significant growth of their online channel. So 27% of retailers saying their online channel grew more than 25%. 47% say that their online channel grew between 10 and 25%, and very few, only 3% saying that they were flat, and only 5% of retailers saying their online channel actually decreased. And those who are seeing decreases in online revenue, it's more usually a much larger overall organizational issue with a declining brand presence, more so than any specific challenge with growing the online channel. And if we take a look now, all the data I shared with you just then was all U.S. data, and we can see here again over on the left, the U.S. market size today in 2018. But if we look globally, we see that there's certainly in the mature Western markets like the UK, Germany, France, very similar growth rates, between today and towards the end of the decade. Markets like Germany going to move from being a $50 billion market to a $75 billion market for online retail. What's really fascinating, we look at some of the emerging markets like Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. Here we're going to see much higher rates of growth proportionately. And in markets like India are just set to explode. India going to go from a $7.2 billion market to a $24 billion market towards the end of the decade. And China, which is already dwarfs the U.S. market, there are $594 billion spent online in China today. Now, these are mostly through marketplaces like Alibaba, Tmall, JD.com. But by 2019, Forrester is forecasting that China becomes the first trillion-dollar e-commerce market. So all of this global growth is really fueling investment in commerce technology as many Western brands and retailers look to expand their online presence into the emerging markets, into the BRIC countries, and especially into China. So all of this investment, also another big trend that we're seeing is around mobile. And if we think about mobile commerce today, it's moved on leaps and bounds from where we were just a couple of years ago. And today, about 28% of all e-commerce online transactions are now from mobile and tablet devices. And just a few years ago, this was nascent. It was, 2 or 3% of transactions coming from mobile and tablet devices. So the growth in mobile transactions is having a sort of foundational impact on the whole industry, and is changing the way that organizations are investing in their technologies to be able to serve the mobile customer. And if we look at mobile traffic especially, this is a very sort of telling picture. For most retailers, there's some exceptions to this, but most of the sort of mature online retailers today find that their combined mobile and tablet traffic now exceeds desktop. And so this is a really interesting paradigm because it puts desktop now as the minority touch point, and it's completely changing the way that firms think about having a mobile-first strategy. It's changing investment strategies. It's changing the technologies that they're using to serve the customer as we see this balance continue to shift. And for most retailers, this happened at some point during 2014. Many of them started to see these days during the holidays when mobile and tablet overtook desktop. But now in 2015, this is pretty much the norm, and that balance is set to continue in favor of more and more visitors coming in through mobile, especially mobile devices, but also growth in tablet. And if we look at what this means for retailers, again, I'm sharing some of the data from our survey we do with shop.org. We can see on the left here the percentage of sales. So about 12% of e-com transactions come from smartphones, about 16% from tablet. So combined, we're just shy of 30% of the total revenue coming through the online channel coming from smartphone and tablets. Over on the right, we talked about this, on average around about 50% of total traffic coming from smartphone and tablets. But what's really fascinating is to look at just the year-over-year growth from 2013 to 2014. 87% growth in mobile sales, 52% growth in tablet sales, and this has really caught some retailers on the back foot as their infrastructure and systems are not really sort of designed to cope for this big shift towards mobile-based e-commerce. So, with all of these sort of trends in terms of, U.S. growth of B2C, U.S. growth of B2B, the overall growth internationally, and then the shift to mobile, as a consequence, most retailers, online retailers, brands, manufacturers, etc., are investing significantly into their commerce technology at the moment to make sure that their commerce technology strategy is ahead of the growth of their channel, making sure that they have scalable, high available platform in place to deal with the growth that's going to happen in the latter end of the decade. And so we can see here most firms, either increasing their capex expenditure on commerce technology or significantly increasing. And we can see, we did the same survey 2 years ago in 2013, and the number of firms who are increasing their budget increased from 66% in 2013 to 85% last year. And actually no firm saying, hey, we're cutting back on our capex investment. There's a few firms, 15% saying, year over year, our investment in commerce technology is going to stay the same. But really, at the moment, due to the sort of explosive growth that we're seeing in the marketplace, no firm saying, hey, let's actually cut back on these budgets. So using that as context, as to sort of some of the drivers in the market where the growth is coming from, let's take a look at sort of four of the key threats that are driving firms to actually say, hey, if we're going to meet the demands of the growth, then we have to look at whether our current incumbent e-commerce technology is going to serve us, well over the next 5 years as we get towards the end of the decade. And there are four key threats that I want to sort of talk about that firms are experiencing in the marketplace today. And first of these is simply that, that there are a lot of retailers out there who are still using homegrown platforms. Perhaps 5, 8, 10 years ago even, there's a lot of retailers who decided to build a homegrown solution, .NET, Java-based solution that served them very, very well over the years. But often those homegrown solutions or sometimes they're actually started life as a commercial solution that was sort of then customized and extended and forked, and today generally bears no resemblance to the original commercial solution. And certainly many firms in that situation have sort of cut off all opportunity to actually upgrade to their vendor's latest version. So there's a lot of companies who are sort of stuck on a legacy version of what was once a sort of mature commercial solution. And so if we think about these systems, they really have too many miles on the clock, and retailers are sort of experiencing a number of issues around platform outages, subpar performance, difficult to maintain. Often the business user tools that are put in front of the marketers and merchandisers are outdated or inefficient, don't have all the sort of latest visual merchandising tools, etc. And one of the biggest issues is actually skill shortages. The developers and architects who originally built and architected these incumbent legacy platforms, most of them have left, and so often retailers find that even if they can keep the lights on and that keep this legacy platform going on a day-to-day basis, that there's actually a huge operational risk around should they have a problem, do they actually have the skills in-house to resolve and quickly get the platform back on its feet again. And so for a lot of companies, when they think about replatforming, the driver is actually risk. It's a risk of what would happen if they had an outage with their platform, if they had some kind of catastrophic failure with their homegrown or legacy platform. Would they actually be able to recover from that? And how is that risk increasing year over year as the demands on the platform in terms of traffic and mobile sales, etc., continues to expand? So this is a big, big driver that ultimately, using the analogy of the picture here, simply the car gets to the point where, we need to pull over at the side of the road and think about a plan B. Now, Second driver is omni-channel. A lot of these existing legacy platforms or homegrown platforms were built and designed in an era when e-commerce was its own channel and served only online sales. But we all know that today, for branded manufacturers and retailers who have physical brick and mortar stores, that omni-channel is critical. And so, again, today's retailers need, integrated product merchandising and pricing between their online and offline channels. They want to be able to do merchandise planning, to have consistent pricing and offering between online and offline, and then have a single tool set where they can do that from. They need associate tools for the in-store customer experience, mobile point of sale, clienteling tools, and often these tools in today's world are actually powered by their e-commerce platform, who's providing a lot of the features and functionality for those tools. They need complete inventory visibility across all of the channels, so making sure that stores have access to online inventory and online has access to store inventory, and making that inventory accurate and visible and available in real time. And also, retailers really want to be able to very quickly execute on omni-channel tactics, things like buy online, pick up in store, ship to store, ship from store. These are tactics that they expect their e-commerce platform to actually have these features baked in and enabled out of the box. And so for a lot of retailers, getting to omni-channel maturity on a legacy platform is a world of pain. And so often, again, one of the drivers to replatforming is to look out into the marketplace and look at sort of the current generation of solutions that have much of these omni-channel capabilities now out of the box, or have stronger integration solutions for working with legacy in-store POS and merchandising systems. So omni-channel, again, a big driver of replatforming in today's market. Number three is many of the existing platforms can't or don't provide sophisticated data insights. So, in the world when e-commerce was its own channel, it was fine just to look at web analytics and to have Google Analytics or Omniture and have sort of visibility into what was happening day to day, visitors on the site, looking at conversion funnels, metrics, and so forth, looking at key metrics like average order value and conversion rate. And that was sort of, that served us well over the last decade. But really, today's firms really want to leverage real-time data insights to drive more efficient and sophisticated marketing, merchandising, pricing, inventory optimization, and to have a 360-degree view of the customer. So today, using big data and analytics and customer behavior, a lot of, retailers are really looking to sort of automate their marketing and merchandising and pricing strategies, to have actionable insights, to have their platform tell them what they should be doing, how to optimize their merchandising, how to optimize their pricing, to do sort of real-time competitor pricing, and to make recommendations of the types of offers that should or should not be put in play. And they really want that 360-degree view of the customer. It's no longer good enough or sufficient to just know what the customer is doing online. We need to have this full end-to-end integrated view of the customer, that we understand what is the customer's both online and offline behavior, and how each of those behaviors influence the other channels. So we often call this understanding the customer's path to purchase. How did digital influence the customer and potentially influence the customer's visit to a physical retail store? And then 4 is that today's buyer, when I say buyer, this is the people attending the webinar today. These are executives, P&L holders who are responsible for technology selection at retailers and manufacturers who are looking at e-commerce technology. And today, firms are not just buying an e-commerce platform. In addition to e-commerce, they need to be able to support, obviously the core commerce functionality of the shopping cart, promotions, pricing. But they also need to be able to support experience management. That's giving more day-to-day control to the marketers and merchandisers to manage the website and to be able to do merchandising and layout and A/B testing and multivariate testing just at the click and drag of a mouse, and not having to have those be IT functions that require developers to do these. They're looking to get better control over their product information management, to have high quality, good, strong content on their website, and so better processes and governance around how they onboard new SKUs and products into their e-commerce engine. They're looking for omnichannel order management. We talked a little bit a minute ago about omnichannel tactics, but order management platforms help facilitate those tactics and provide that single view of inventory and provide the omnichannel fulfillment capabilities. And then also in-store associate enablement. So it's really sort of become an expectation today that the e-commerce platform is in fact a suite, and we call this now sort of the era of the suite, where many of the vendors in the landscape are providing more than just an e-commerce platform. They're actually providing a comprehensive suite of capabilities. And if we look at sort of Forrester's framework for this suite of capabilities, we see that there's sort of 4 key pillars, and I just mentioned these. That the commerce suite of today really, needs to have the core e-commerce capabilities around cart and pricing and so forth. They need that experience management tools to allow the marketers and merchandisers to preview the site, to test the site, to try personalization rules, to make sure that the site is working on mobile devices and tablet devices, to do content management and offering and so forth. And that's really, really important today. It's a big, big focus of many of the retailers. And then PIM I talked about, and then order management. And so, today's platforms really are trying to, or providing all 4 pillars of, or parts of these 4 pillars, and then making sure that wrapped around that there are great commerce APIs so that we can develop mobile apps and kiosks and support social and other touch points through APIs to make sure that these platforms are fully localized so that they can support brands and divisions in different markets, and we can localize currency and we can localize language, to make sure that we can run multiple sites and brands and divisions all from one instance of the platform. This is sort of almost a mandatory capability today. Most retailers, have some form of global footprint, whether they're operating stores in Canada or Europe, and they want to run multiple market sites from one platform. Or they have different brands and divisions where they have sort of smaller subdivisions, or they want to run a B2B site for corporate orders alongside a B2B site for consumer orders. And they want to do all of this on a common platform. It doesn't make sense in today's world to be running multiple different platforms inside of an organization. There's economies of scale that come from having a single platform that can do all of this. And then, of course, at the bottom here, making sure that these platforms are scalable, performant, that they have, best-in-class security, and that they integrate well with back-office technologies. And this is really a given as we think about the sort of increase on demands on these platforms going forward. So, given this, and given the sort of complexity of the suite, what does the future hold for commerce technology? Where are we going on this journey? And what are some of the sort of changes in the sort of buying behaviors of customers who are buying commerce technology? Well, the first thing to take a look at is to say, well, how are organizations supporting their e-commerce today? What are the types of solutions? So we can see that 28% of firms use a sort of commercial license. These are typically on-premise applications from the big software firms like IBM, Oracle, and SAP. And there's a lot of these platforms that are out there installed today, and these type of solutions are still generally used by a lot of enterprise companies and a lot of larger retailers. There's also an equal amount of homegrown or legacy commercial solutions out there. And I talked earlier how a lot of these legacy commercial solutions may have started life as a commercial tool, but ended up being customized to the point where, today they are, to all intents and purposes, a homegrown or custom solution. And there's still a lot of those solutions out there. We see a lot of open source solutions, and then also solutions, SaaS-based solutions, multi-tenant SaaS solutions like Mozu in the market. And there's still some full service offerings, some companies who still completely outsource not just their e-commerce technology, but their fulfillment, their contact center, and their operations to a vendor. Now, if we look at how the market's shifting over the next few years, what we're going to see is, should I go back a moment, we're going to see that overall, as a proportion of the market, that the homegrown solutions shrink as a lot of those homegrown solutions are replaced. And also, a lot of the people who traditionally used on-premise licensed applications move over instead to using more sort of SaaS-based, cloud-based solutions. So we're certainly seeing more appetite from potential customers around investing in open source and SaaS-based technologies to replace those homegrown e-commerce platforms. And if we look at this, this is a sort of, again, a framework that Forrester uses to talk about sort of really a rule of thumb for these different types of solutions that exist in the market. And so along the top here, we have really on a vertical axis of online revenue, and we can see it goes, from sort of small SMB and mom and pop shops who are typically doing less than 5 million of revenue online, through to large, corporate enterprises that are doing over 5 billion online. And so, some of the really big guys like eBay and Amazon, they typically build their own platform and have hundreds of thousands of developers and hundreds of millions of dollars or billion-dollar budgets to invest in building their own solution. From sort of 100 million online revenue up to 5 billion, licensed on-premise applications are still very popular and still commonly used. But what we see is that multi-tenant SaaS-based solutions and open source solutions are coming up market and are maturing and are better able today to serve larger corporate enterprise clients, as multi-tenant SaaS is sort of very proven from a scalability perspective, but is increasingly proving itself as being very flexible, as many of the vendors today have sort of extension frameworks, PaaS environments where you can build extensions onto a multi-tenant SaaS-based environment. So multi-tenant SaaS is certainly competing very heavily with licensed or on-premise applications, especially in that sort of upper mid-market, the sort of $50 to $100 million in online revenue. Some of those firms are increasingly looking to either open source or multi-tenant SaaS-based solutions as they re-platform their legacy, homegrown or commercial-based solutions. And so, when we also look at the rate of re-platforming that's happening in the market, what we can see here is over on the left, 34% of companies saying we have no plans whatsoever to re-platform our e-commerce. These are the companies that have been through re-platforming in the recent past, in the last 2 to 3 years, and are very happy with their current solution and have a return on investment to realize and are intending to stay with their solution for many years to come. But we can see that 21% of all companies are currently underway with a platform replatforming project, meaning that they've already selected a vendor and they're in either they're just completed a vendor selection or they're in a phase of rollout of replacing their e-commerce technology, and that's driving a huge amount of investment into the system integrators and agencies who are supporting these programs. But over on the right of the diagram, we see approximately over a third of firms have near-term plans to re-platform. So going back to the 4 pain points that I talked about earlier, we see there are a lot of companies who have putting together the business plan and putting together budgets in place to re-platform away from their legacy e-commerce capabilities and infrastructure over to a next-generation platform in the next 36 months. And so that's going to drive significant investment in commerce technology for the next three years or so. Now, finally, I just want to wrap up and talk a little bit about where some of the growth is coming from. Over on the left here, we see the breakdown by commerce technology investment by vertical in 2013, and on the right, our forecast for how this is going to change by 2019. Now, this is a sort of proportionate overall share, so the market is growing, but as a share, B2C, so consumer products and retail, is actually going to sort of shrink slightly as an overall market share. And what we're going to see is a big investment from manufacturing, wholesale companies, business service companies who are investing in B2B commerce, who are going to be using e-commerce technology to to do B2B sales as they sell to their distributors, to end customers, to engineers, etc. And so big growth there, and then also growth from other emerging verticals that typically we might not have thought of as investing in e-commerce technology: education and government, healthcare, financials, utilities, media and entertainment, telco. These are all companies that sell products and services online are increasingly investing in e-commerce technology to support those sales, and that again is driving a lot of growth in the marketplace. So anyway, so I'm going to wrap up now and pass over to Jason. He's going to talk a little bit about Mozu and Mozu's view of the marketplace. But I hope that gives you a little bit of sort of background and sort of foundation on some of the factors that are driving the market and some of the sort of reasons that are leading retailers to make that decision to replatform. And as you saw in the second last slide there, a lot of urgency around needing to replatform in the next couple of years.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, this is Jason Wallace from Mozu. Peter, I always enjoy hearing kind of your thorough analysis and broad overview of all the trends that are kind of affecting retailers in the market today, whether it's consumer behavior or just advancements in technology. I would like to talk just a little bit about, as a platform provider, kind of our perspective on the same topic. And, certainly what we see as we talk to folks such as Peter or retailers in the market, that with all of these forces at play with consumer behavior changing and expectations changing, that if the platform isn't really, in a position to support that, it very much starts to feel like, a drag and a boat anchor, and I can't operationalize things fast enough to take advantage of this. And you can be in a position where you're really overwhelmed by this change. Now, the difference with, kind of platforms that have the opportunity of being built in the market when it's in the state and they're aware of these challenges, it's a very different feeling, because the platform is very much an enabler of riding these waves of change and not, a barrier to being successful in the market in spite of them. Setting the tone a little bit, I just kind of want to go back to kind of when e-commerce was in its infancy, and we got to go all the way back to the 90s, really into the early 90s, and reflect on that point in time when the challenges were very different. I mean, at that point, it was the basic blocking and tackling of dealing with browser standards and just getting content and product up on sites, processing payments, kind of very much the basics. And we started to graduate and think about consumers as individuals and not as, a mass of folks, and get some personalization. That became more important then. And then mobile hit us. And really it was the modern smartphone platform in 2007 when that came, that we hit the inflection point. And I don't think we realized even then the pressure that was going to put on retailers. And I certainly contribute a lot of the omni-channel experiences that are demanded today as being born out of that mobile adoption. So it really hasn't been just about dealing with a new form factor and a new kind of interaction method with touch. It's really just dramatically changed the expectations for what consumers expect in-store agents to have the power in their hands to do, because shopper says, well, I have a personal computer in my pocket, basically, that I can research and find anything at a moment's notice. I expect you to be able to do the same in the store, as well as just the scenarios now of, showrooming and, buying something and picking it up in store, and all of the sort of mobile-enabled scenarios. So it's dramatically changed the landscape. And I think there's really two key characteristics that a platform needs to embody today in order to be an enabler and a viable long-term solution for not only the market conditions that we see today, but what are the market conditions going to be like in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? If you're planning for what you have today in a time of change, you're going to find yourself flat-footed, in the not-too-distant future. So those two characteristics really are nimbleness and openness. If you have nimbleness and openness, then you're in a posture where you can deal with change. And as a platform provider, for us, we strongly feel that SaaS is the most nimble platform, delivery method out there, and for a couple of key reasons. Number one, the development lifecycle time of envisioning, kind of getting feedback from the market that a feature needs to be in the platform, to the feature being delivered in the hands of a retailer that can actually be used is considerably shorter. So, for example, the Mozu platform, we have substantial quarterly releases that make new features available for retailers to take advantage of. And you think about the typical life cycle of software that's delivered either on demand or through a typical license installed model, that's more in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 to 4 years between feature being developed, major product release being delivered, project undertaken to implement, migrate, and change. And so compressing those cycles is absolutely critical in times when the market is forcing these changes on retailers. So for us, SaaS really gives that flexibility and that nimbleness, which allows us to be more innovative, move more quickly, and just have a much faster time to market. The second piece is openness. And I think Peter touched on some of the changes in kind of how SaaS platforms are becoming more flexible and open. And that's another key trend, and for us in Mozu, that was kind of a key tenet from the very beginning, was not only were we going to have this highly flexible platform delivered via SaaS, but we were going to embrace openness. So all of the development tooling and SDKs to build those extensions and applications that Peter referenced, all that tooling is available open source in kind of all the common modern platforms that developers expect. So you don't have to worry about training a development staff on a proprietary set of technologies that they're going to become very expensive and only be able to work with this one technology or tool set. It's just more open from the get-go, so it integrates with an entire ecosystem. The other thing for us is that we very much believe in innovation, experimentation, and so we want to empower retailers with that same capability. So kind of unlimited sandboxes where retailers can, quickly at the touch of a button, spin up an entirely new environment with their own data, with their own content, and then, try things out in that environment without risking their production environment. So just removing all of the typical technology and process and personnel barriers to that, SaaS technologies and kind of how the Mozu platform implements that, makes that something that is a click of a button in a few minutes instead of projects that take weeks and months to execute. And then finally, just, we very much have a policy of if we build reference stores or sites or demos, we release all of that out to the market as well, so that, if we make an advancement in a theme for some really novel and effective responsive design techniques, well, that implementation is available for you to take and customize on your own. So that nimbleness and openness, I can't stress enough, is very much a critical part of when a market is changing rapidly and trying to be future-proof against the changes that are coming. Those are the number 1 and 2 qualities that we feel a platform needs to embrace in order to make retailers successful. What that leads to is, the other advantage that we have is that being built in a time where we sort of had an understanding of the problems that people were facing, is hard things are easy. So, with legacy platforms, getting consistency across devices, and this isn't just about delivering consistent content. That is one entire challenge and piece of the pie, but it's also about delivering consistent experiences and having feature parity. So that on a Mozu platform is very easy to achieve because the platform was built with that expectation from the beginning. So the management tools around the content management, all the features and how they're implemented mean that you don't have to sacrifice your mobile experience for your desktop experience, or as to the point that mobile and tablets really overtaking desktop in a lot of cases, sacrifice your desktop experience for your mobile experience is really, a position that you may find yourself in. So, consistency of functionality and consistency of content is an absolutely critical element of the solution, as well as streamline operations. So, most retailers have not just sort of one catalog and one set of products at one price level that they want to target to one device or one experience. It's much more complex than that. So Mozu is built from the ground up to handle this notion of bringing in externally sourced catalog information or content, organizing it into a set of master catalogs or catalogs, depending on how the setup needs to be optimized for that particular problem, and then pushing them out to all of those digital experiences wherever a customer might be. That might be in-store, could be a mobile device, could be a desktop experience. Being open and having this API backend really drops those barriers to where that content can be served. And in the end, what that delivers is consistent experiences and convenient experiences for customers. And that's what it's all about. Customers are demanding these engaging experiences across devices, in stores, online, being able to have visibility to inventory, order data, et cetera. And if that's not there, if the omni-channel scenarios aren't there, pick up in store, customers vote with their feet. We've all seen that. And that's a trend that's not going to go away as expectations are even more deeply ingrained for what a consumer can do on a site. So just kind of bringing a picture here of kind of how Mozu hangs all this together. There's several key components. We have we have on this multi-tenant SaaS backbone, we have this strong development platform and development tools that allow to integrate Mozu into existing applications you already may have big investments in, or customize and extend that Mozu experience, build native applications, native mobile applications, really a lot of different platforms to work with, as well as do all of that front-end design and development work, and providing, there's a key element of this where developers can provide, reusable, we call them widgets, to merchants and business users, so that there's a very strong, thread through here of empowering business users to make site changes without having to involve a developer, because that just tends to slow things down. So very robust tool sets for visual tool sets for managing pages, authoring content, previewing, publishing, and having business users be able to have all that control and power in their own hands. So that's the Dev Center tool set, and then this commerce and content management tool set for managing the typical entities you see involved in a life cycle, and then the front-end experiences that are delivered really on whichever device is appropriate for that, and a core set of technologies that allow you to effectively provide that feature and content parity across all those experiences. And the backbone of all this is an exceptionally open REST API, once again, to allow really any developer to work in the platform of their choice and not have to force anybody down the path of dealing with proprietary technologies that are going to be only valuable in one context and hard to train people on. And that just kind of gums up the works for all that innovation that's demanded today. With some of our existing sites, we've seen some really great growth. Jelly Belly is a good example of that. They replaced their homegrown system, and they were growing, and they had one system that was supporting B2C and B2B scenarios and a set of content sites worldwide. The system started to manage them and kind of outgrew their ability to keep it up and running and make enhancements in it. And they found themselves just only doing maintenance, and were falling further and further behind the mobile curve in one regard. So, they migrated over to Mozu, and one of the very first things they saw was a dramatic increase in mobile revenue, because they finally had feature parity in a site that worked very well across mobile and desktop experiences, and they could manage it actually. So they were able to shift their development resources to working on problems that differentiated them, and not working on kind of the boring stuff, as I call it, that we do. They don't have to worry about in the cart and some of the very basic things. Well, we can handle that. You go build site experiences that are unique to you. So it's been a really good story there in partnership with them. Another example is Tons Of. And Tons Of, they launched initially moving from another platform, and they were struggling on the other platform with performance and scalability, and just, once again, the site was managing them. They weren't really managing the site. They couldn't actually get their large catalog in and have response times that were satisfactory. So we brought them over to Mozu. They initially launched with about 500,000 SKUs, got that site up and running from scratch in just a few months. The performance has been through the roof. That's another thing. We have a very experienced engineering team that can ensure that their site runs and scales, and they don't have to worry about that. They can focus on their core business. And I think they're up now to over 1 million SKUs in that catalog, and they've seen a dramatic improvement in the time that they can affect change on their site. Part of that goes to the ability for them to push content into the system very quickly from their external feeds, and the other part of that is just the visual tool sets they have now for creating landing pages, promotional content, and just managing the site is a much more robust tool set than they had in the legacy platform they're on before. And another example is Sigma Beauty, maker of cosmetic products. They migrated to Mozu, and their real goal was they wanted to attract a younger demographic, dramatically improve their mobile experience, and then provide a very rich and engaging, site experience that was just outside of the normal sort of cookie cutter approach to things. So very visual experience in that case. They also had a very robust catalog with complex pricing rules and a lot of unique catalogs. That's B2B mixed in with their B2C business. So they were able to very quickly stand up a highly engaging, very unique site experience, and their marketing team really has full control over using the business user tools where they had to kind of get back to developers before. So they've been very much empowered and are very, very happy with the time to market, innovation, and speed with which they can move in that regard. And that parity across devices has been a key win for them. So just kind of closing out, for Mozu and kind of how we see Mozu fitting in this sort of shifting landscape that, like I said before, we had definitely had the benefit of building Mozu after this sea change of mobile, has made all of us aware that the consumer's in the driver's seat right now. So that gave us the advantage of being able to build the ability to have these highly connected experiences in a tool set that is easy to operationalize and manage, because if you can't manage it, you're not going to be able to make improvements to it, and that's going to become a big barrier as the market continues to change and as consumers continue to push everywhere, push retailers further and further. The second piece is, reducing the dependence on IT and software development when you can really put the power in the marketing team's hands and let merchants make the changes they need to make and move the site in the direction they need it to go, and kind of cut out that middleman and reduce that cost. So that's, another key element of it. And then frankly, just being on a modern technology stack with innovative technology, and open, it really allows us to be nimble and agile to changes in the market as they come. So we're able to keep, when the nice thing is, because SaaS makes us nimble, that enables retailers to be nimble. So that combination of SaaS nimbleness and openness, gives an unprecedented level of flexibility for retailers. And I'm going to turn it over to John to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Peter, as well. For me, the market shifts resonate very clearly as a marketer, as to the importance of a unified experience across all touch points. And really, as I practice in our team, meeting consumers on their terms to ultimately win that customer engagement and share of wallet and differentiate yourself as a retailer and as a business. Also the effectiveness of the modern technology solutions that are coming out that actually put that control to create those experiences directly in the hands of marketers and developers. So, they and we are not, we're freed up on internal resources where otherwise they'd be consumed by maintaining older systems and struggling with their inherent limitations, and just how important that is as people look for ways to continue to stay ahead of the demand in the marketplace. So thank you both, Jason and Peter, for that. With that, we'll now move into our QA portion. I'm going to take a moment to pause and gather questions really quickly. Okay, we have a short list of questions here. Peter, this one is for you, it looks like. It seems every vendor has a cloud or SaaS commerce offering today. What are the real differences between one cloud platform and the next?
It's a great question. So I think, the term cloud is often sort of bandied around or potentially misused. And certainly, almost the majority of the vendors now can and do offer cloud hosting, either themselves or through hosting partners. And so many of the vendors talk about on-demand offerings, talk about cloud offerings, talk about SaaS offerings, and it's pretty across the industry now. You should most of the vendors will provide a sort of one throat to choke SaaS-based offering where you can typically lease the platform rather than necessarily buy it outright. So there's from a licensing perspective, it's very easy now to sort of spread the cost of ownership over a number of years over a term, rather than having to sort of fork up front for large expensive perpetual license. So that's common. And like I said, the actual hosting now is often done in a cloud-based environment. So sort of elastic scalability as more demand comes in. One of the big differences, though, between the different cloud solutions in the market is whether they are truly multi-tenant or whether they are single-tenant. And the actual tenancy of the data doesn't matter per se. Most clients, retailers, don't really worry too much as to whether their data is actually in a multi-tenant environment and shared with alongside other data or resides next to another client's data. The real difference between single tenancy and multi-tenancy comes as to how upgrades are managed, and this is sort of a bit of an Achilles heel of the industry, because typically on-premise perpetual software needs to be upgraded, and these upgrades, as you upgrade a sort of on-premise platform, typically take anything from a few weeks to 6 or more months, depending on the complexity of the implementation and the customizations and integrations that you've done. And so trying to keep up to date and upgrading at the same rate that your vendors releasing updates can be very tough, because most of the vendors release updates every 3 to 6 months, and taking every one of those upgrades can be very costly and disruptive to your roadmap, as you have to divert technical resources to do upgrades rather than to innovation and to sort of feature enhancements and functionality. So the main difference with a multi-tenant SaaS platform is that the vendor is sort of on the hook for doing the upgrades for you. They're effectively pushing the upgrades to you, and you have to take them whether you like it or not. Usually it's a mandatory push, and all of a sudden, one day when you log into your administrative console, there's some new features and capabilities, and hopefully some training and education on what those features are and how you use them. But it's mandatory versus a pool model with a traditional on-premise or a single-tenant platform, where you have to, request and pool the upgrade, and that there's effort involved on your part in terms of the spend to have a partner or your own internal technical resources actually implement that upgrade, do the regression testing, and so forth. So the big difference between the different SaaS solutions in the market is really who's on the hook for doing upgrades.
Great, thank you, Peter. This one I'm going to hand over to you, Jason. With the recent Google algorithm change that puts more emphasis on mobile, is a responsive design still a good solution, or is a dedicated mobile site a good enough or a better solution?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting the Google adopting this change, because it's further validation of where the market is, not just kind of where it's going. And their consideration of mobile site performance and usability in their indexing process is a strong signal. What we've seen since the change is that responsive is still a very effective tool to not have that mobile get an algorithm change have a negative impact, and it does provide a positive impact. I think The downside of a dedicated site is obviously it's a different domain typically, and it's also another code base. You're having that feature parity is very difficult to manage, and so you're going to be falling short of customers' expectations in that mode. So responsive is still the way to go. That's kind of what we're recommending, and the data that we've gathered since that change has validated that.
Great, thank you. Okay, really quickly, this one is definitely for you, Jason. What is the average investment required to get onto the Mozu platform? We love this question.
That's a good question. First, one of the core premises from Mozu is predictable pricing and fair pricing. And so, we've, for a variety of reasons, we do not feel that a percentage of revenue model is a fair nor effective model, and that in fact it creates some disincentives to providing unified experiences and getting all the data into one place. For example, if you're a brick and mortar retailer and you want to provide order visibility across all the customers' transactions, but you're being charged % of revenue, then you're probably not going to have a strong incentive to bring order data into your commerce platform because you don't want to pay revenue on that even though it wasn't generated there. So we just kind of want to avoid all of those, those perverse disincentives that get built into that model. So Mozu is very much a predictable utilization-based model in terms of ongoing licensing costs, depending on number of site visits, et cetera. And in terms of the initial investment required, typically that's a function of the amount of time required because it's a labor-intensive, activity to migrate platforms. The good news is that with our focus on time to market and openness, we remove a lot of the barriers and friction in that process. So we've found that we have very favorable time to market times for launches, and so cost therefore is a reflection of that and lower.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have about time for one more question. I'm going to redirect towards you, Peter. Replatforming away from our existing solution is potentially a huge technical risk for our company. Is there a way to do that with lower risk or phase our migration away from our legacy solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on sort of, in many cases, how much revenue you're pushing through your e-com platform. If it's significant, north of $50 million, doing a sort of overnight flick of the switch from your old platform to your new platform is for sure, risky, and you need to set expectations with executives that there's most likely for a period of months going to be a drop-off in conversion rates as there are teething problems, as customers become used to the new experience if you've redesigned the actual storefront as part of the migration. So there's a few sort of ways that you can look at this. First of all, if there's multiple parts to your technology refresh program, that you should probably do them in phases. So if it's part of your overall program is that you're doing implementing a new PIM, implementing a new order management platform, and a new e-commerce platform, perhaps new ERP, make sure you phase these things. Trying to put them all together into one project, significantly increases the risk. So prioritize these. If order management is top priority, do that first. Put e-commerce off for a year. If PIM is something that's there but it's not as high priority, get your new e-commerce platform in first and then do PIM next year. So phase the rollout of the technologies. And then if you do have multiple storefronts, if you have different stores for different brands or different stores in different markets, that's a great way to pick some of the lower risk sites and do your launch onto the new platform on some of the smaller sites first. Get past those teething problems and pains. Do some of the emerging market sites or some of those smaller brands, and take the learnings from those to make sure that when you flip the switch on your main North American.com site, that everything goes smoothly.
Great, thank you very much. Well, it looks like we are at our time limit today. We are happy to field additional Q&A after the fact offline. I want a special thank you to Peter Sheldon and Jason Wallace, and thank you to all of our audience for joining us on this latest installment of the Mozu webinar series. Have a great day.